Hey everyone. Now to talk about the 8th episode of Voltron Legendary Defenders 7th Season, The Last Stand Part 2. But first to talk about the major controversy around this episode and probably the overall season, the debut, death scene, and nothing in between of Adam, who was known to be Shiro's either boyfriend or fiance shortly before he left for the Kerberos mission at the beginning of the series. Like many fans, I was excited to hear about the positive potential for this kind of representation and character inclusion, even with the news about Shiro's orientation coming pretty late in the show. And even with the kind of argument and stuff that they had at the flashback of the early in the season, things still showed some potential, but his scene in this episode, his only other scene in this season so far, is him leading a fighter squadron against Galrish cruisers and being the last to be shot down. I know some of the negative reactions have gone into like personal levels of harassment and like targeted anger, and that's not the way to go. But the overall level of disappointment, at least, is understandable and justified. I don't feel good about it either. And even kind of being careful in how I choose my words here. And kind of a loosely good development is Joaquim dos Santos recently sharing an open apology about that narrative choice and how it was received. And it's kind of uncertain how much was like production complications versus just poor narrative choices. But he does understand that it was quite the misstep and does hope that they can do better, even with Season 8 probably already mostly done. So, do I have like a personal hatred or negative turn towards any of the creative team? No. But I do consider the handling of Adam as a character and his role in the story quite the negative choice. Even with the themes and stuff that they've long strived for with the show. So that's my serious talk. But to the overall episode itself. Still continuing the flashback story. Continues where the first part left off. Soon after getting more advanced technologies up and running at their garrison base, Commander Holt and the others soon find a Galra invasion fleet led by Sendak and his Fire of Purification faction descending upon Earth as they spread out to several major cities and, of course, above that base, start openly attacking starting to round up citizens. And while the base can hold out quite well due to some of their on-site resources and a particle shield that's recently been put online, people are being rounded up. Several are being used for slave labor on, I think they have what they're considered, but essentially like occupation bases throughout the planet. Communication is being cut off. So now we're into kind of a post-apocalyptic story with this one. And Sendak, he gives a pretty simple but pretty dark line when he gives the order to cut off even satellite communication, even with that ending up cutting off their signals to possibly Voltron or any other allies. He says, when you hear an animal crying out in pain, you proceed with caution, but silence promotes haste. So that's pretty quick, but eerily profound in a way. But there's still like on-site controversies between Holt and I forget her name, Sanda and Iverson, and how they should approach the situation, what use their recent cadets should be put to. But they work on gathering resources and continuing production on the vehicle known as the IGF Atlas in the hopes that it'll turn the tide against the Gara. And eventually they do manage to get a last-ditch effort of communication out that sends the message that, of course, the Paladins pick up back in the present day of this season. Also, in a bit of weird world building, they mentioned in passing that there was a World War III. So, Well, I should also note that the aesthetic for both these episodes is pretty interesting because, of course, early in the show and through some other flashbacks, we've seen how the garrison looks with its tech and its uniforms and stuff, but seeing it gradually get more advanced through reverse-engineered Altan and Galra innovations is pretty interesting. And for all I know, again, probably inspired somewhat by the original Voltron show and other mecha franchises. But yeah, another pretty good episode. Quite engaging. But with a bit of a unfortunate mark upon it by a certain character and narrative choice. But you get my thoughts on that specifically and on the rest of the episode as it went. So with that, I'll see you at episode 61.